Hey guys, this is Star Force Reacts, and I am back to do something I do on a semi-regular occasion, and that is I am going to predict the next death battle. And usually when I do these kinds of predictions, most of the time I'm not very accurate with these kinds of things, but I do feel at least a little bit confident about this one, because next episode is going to be Tomura Shigaraki versus Mahito. So, yeah, this is gonna be really fun. The battle of the handymen, if you will. They know how to work with their hands, so, that kind of stuff. But, yeah, so, this is going to be mostly unscripted. In fact, it's going to be entirely unscripted. I'm just, talking out of my ass here. This is going to be, very heavily edited, but I am going to be mostly just speaking what comes to my mind when I talk, talking about these two and how, they're pretty much yeah, how I think this battle is going to go down and how these two compare to each other. Might as well start with the similarities between the two because yeah, that there's got to be some connections as to why this fight was chosen. And I do believe this fight was rather popular back in the day when both of these series were still ongoing, and I think like maybe like midway through their series, like that's when it was like at their peak, but now it's kind of faded into not really obscurity. Death Battle is doing it after all, but more along the lines of it's kind of seen as like, "Aw, Mahito, you think you have a chance?" Anyway, let me put it this way. Mahito kind of not really wasn't really killed off, but he stopped becoming relevant. Like after the Shibuya incident arc, which is like the second biggest arc in the show, I think, if you can even call it that. But pretty much, yeah, it's season two. Like there we go. Mahito's no longer relevant after season two, to put it, in that kind of way. Shigaraki, on the other hand, started small, but he worked his way up to become the main villain of My Hero Academia. That's his whole story. So, yeah, whereas one guy just it was left to stagnate, one guy just kind of kept rising higher and higher and kept getting more and more powerful. So, yeah, but the main thing people were drawn to was they kind of look the same, and plus they have a very similar attack where it's basically instant kill as long as, they can touch you. But yeah, that's pretty much how that goes. So, so to start things off, we will start talking about Tomura Shigaraki and how and his journey to rise to be the ultimate villain. And then we'll go into Mahito, and then we'll jump into the conclusion, and like, well, I'll go over feats and stats and all that. So let's just jump right into it. So, in the far distant future of their humanity evolved in a way. They developed a certain mutations, very genetic mutations. I personally haven't gotten to if there was an actual explanation as to how quirks came into being, but these mutations were called quirks. And one such being, yeah, rose above all the other ones because his quirk was to take quirks and give them. He basically controls quirks. And that man, we don't know his real name, but he would come to be known as the big bad villain, All for One. And yeah, trying to get into the entire story of All for One and like the history of him and One for All is going to be is going to be very taxing, so I'll give you a brief abridged version. So basically, All for One had a brother, a quirkless brother, and so All for One, he did love his brother. He's more along but he more along the lines saw him as a bit of a pet, like, "Oh, little brother," and that kind of thing. So one day, like, yeah, but here's the thing: his villainous actions, his brother did not approve. His brother was a hero through and through in a world where heroes just didn't exist quite yet. So, All for One, again, he just saw his brother as a little cute little pet, basically stole a quirk, basically a quirk that is able to stockpile quirk. That's pretty much what it's called, and gave it to his brother because it's a useless quirk. What's he going to do with it? But it turns out his brother was not in fact quirkless, but his quirk was to pass his quirk factor or whatever along to somebody else. And when his brother's quirk interacted with this new stockpile quirk, it merged and became a brand new thing that would come to be known as One for All. And his brother would pass it along to someone else, who would then pass it along to someone else, and eventually we started a centuries-long feud between whoever holds One for All and All for One. Eventually, One for All gets passed to its new wielder, Nana Shimura, and the fights between her and All for One did not go very well. For one thing, I think they might have only had like one big fight, and that resulted in her death, but that's skipping ahead a bit. At one point, All for One got her husband killed, and so to try and keep in an act to try and keep her family safe, she gave up her son to an orphanage, and and continued to fight all for one by herself, and along with her friends, or like one friend, I guess. But yeah, and eventually, found a quirkless kid named Toshinori Yagi who she eventually passed along her quirk, and that guy became All Might, the world's symbol of peace and justice. And he would eventually go on and take out All for One, or so he thought. Back to Nana's kid, he grew up, and because he grew up with a rather big chip on his shoulder, in a sense of he now hates all heroes because of what his mother did, and he tried to pass that along to his kids. Problem was, Nana's kid, Kotaro, I think his name was, he grew up to be a bit of a dick. He wasn't 100% of a dick. He did care about his family, but the moment his kids started showing interest in heroism, he was like, no. It's like a switch flips on in his brain, where all of a sudden it almost like, I don't want to say it's like a PTSD attack, but or maybe it's some kind of bipolar thing. I don't know. I'm not an expert on that kind of stuff, but yeah, he very much tried to impress upon his kids. Heroes are no good. They only save. They save others. They save strangers with no regards to their family and stuff like that. And his young son Tenko, yeah, he got the full brunt of it one night when he and his sister found a picture of Nana Shimura, and yeah, and unfortunately that night Tenko's quirk awakened. And his quirk happened to be a quirk called Decay. Decay, basically, it's exactly what it sounds like. He presses his hand on all 5 fingers onto something, and it immediately starts decaying. And even worse, when it first appeared, it could spread. Anything, that touches the decay also begins to decay. So, yeah, if you get what I mean. So, and that night, Tenko murdered his entire family. Mostly by accident. Like I said, it awakened, he had no control over it. The only person he killed on purpose was his dad, understandably so, because, after, he was the last to go, and the dad, kinda understandably, but at the same time, what the hell, man? He, seeing, his entire family disintegrate, he grabbed, a pipe or something, and smacked Tenko with it. Yeah, on the one hand, I understand the emotional outburst, but on the other hand, that's your son, dude. And so, yeah, again, that, completely understandable. That's self-defense right there. And the rest are just kind of accidental murders. But yeah, Tenko was eventually picked up by All for One, and this was after quite a while of living on the street because no one stopped to help him. And honestly, kind of suspicious if you ask me, but whatever. All for One's known for doing these screwed up things, so it wouldn't surprise me if, he manipulated the situation so that Tenko would eventually come into his care, but, I haven't really gotten that far into the show, so All for One raised Tenko to be his little protege, his little side experiment, so that, someone who can grow up and inherit his will, that kind of thing. I get the feeling that All for One looked at, the ever-growing generations of One for All as I wonder if I can do that. And so basically that's what he did with Tenko. And so he renamed Tenko Tomura Shigaraki, with Tomura being to mourn or to grieve or something like that, and Shigaraki being his own last name, and thus the manipulation of Tomura truly took hold, and it's kind of, it did kind of turn out to be a like a Sith from Star Wars thing, where yeah, there's a master and an apprentice, but because it's ultimately villainous at the end of the day, both of them hate each other. um, I mean, maybe All for One didn't exactly hate Tomura, but again, he doesn't exactly see other humans as, potentially equals. He sees other people as cute little pets. So, and Tomura, while he does respect his master quite a lot, he still hates him. There's still a lot of hate festering inside Tomura, and he's been literally told to hate, hate, hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate since I began to live. That kind of thing. So Tomura, mastered his decay ability as best as he can, but due to mental blocks, because, yes, very traumatic childhood, he wasn't able to use decay to its fullest potential. It had gotten slower. He could only decay the things that he directly touched. And eventually, Tomura became so strong, he created a league of villains, or rather, I mean, All for One did technically help him with assembling this, crack team of villains, but Tomura did, assemble a squad around him that were loyal to him, and that was like Spinner, Himiko Toga, Dabi, Mr. Compress, all these guys. They just form a very fun ragtag team of villains. You gotta love them. They're very lovable villains, but at the same time they're still villains, and Tomura still wants to destroy literally everything because society screwed him over. So and eventually Tomura did go back to one of All for One's main sidekick, the Dr. Garaki, but we're just gonna call him the Doctor, except not that doctor. But anyway, so the Doctor basically told him, okay, prove yourself worthy, and I will give you All for One, and by All for One I mean the quirk All for One, and you will have all the power in the world. So Tomura proceeded to prove himself, fighting, All for One's, top lackey for like multiple days and nights with barely any rest. But eventually he did in fact prove himself. His quirk awakened once again. He was able to use it to its full extent. He no longer had to directly touch someone in order for them to decay. As long as he touched something and that surface that's decaying touches that person, they decay as well. So now it's indirect touch. And so after proving himself, Tomura was injected with All for One. There's really no other way to put that in my head. And a few months later, Tomura woke back up, but only because the heroes showed up at when Tomura was only 75% done getting injected with All for One, and basically woke up at only 75% of his energy and is like, what the heck? And so, but he was able to fight the other heroes too. And yeah, even without his quirk, he was now physically stronger than All Might. And I think that's a good time I think this is now a good time to go into Shigaraki's feats and what he's able to do. I've already explained decay. But ever since he woke up with All for One, he got a very, very big boost in physical strength, whether that's through, multiple quirk mutations because of All for One, or Garaki really did something to Tomura's physical body. But just physically, without any quirks, directly enhancing him, because Eraserhead, whose ability is to erase someone's quirk by looking at them, he was looking at Tomura that pretty much most of this fight, and Tomura's physical abilities were so strong that they were compared to Prime All Might. And according to Death Battle, he can punch with that number of TNT. I don't remember off the top of my head. Like I said, this is kind of unscripted. But yeah, like I said, Tomura just got OP very quickly. And when it comes to speed, light speed feats are a very rare thing in My Hero Academia, but the only reason we have light speed feats is because of Tomura Shigaraki, who's able to catch lasers and even react to them, so he's at the very least relativistic. But yeah, that's just his physical stuff. When it comes to like his versatility, oh, ever since he got All for One, quirks up the wazoo, hyper regeneration. There's like radio waves, which if taken literally, those are as fast as light. So, yeah, we got rivet, stab, or whatever those things are called. We just a whole lot of quirks at his disposal, like air cannon. Like I said, there's way too many to get into, and since this is pretty much unscripted, I don't really exactly have a list in front of me to list off all of his quirks, but rest assured, there's a lot of them. So yeah, including quirks that already enhance his already busted strength and speed. But yeah, I know I spent a lot of time talking about, Tomura's story, but that's really because, like, the story of Tenko Shimura and Tomura Shigaraki is just so interesting to me. People are gonna call me biased for this, and I will freely admit, I am a bit biased, because I do believe Tomura Shigaraki is my favorite new generation shonen villain. He's just so interesting to, like, look into, that childhood trauma, and then there's Deku's whole thing of wanting to save the child within that's still, in Shigaraki, wanting to save him from himself, basically. But again, this is still very much but again, like I said, this leads to very interesting storylines. Do they accomplish them? I don't know if they do. Does the story, execute these ideas well? I don't know. I haven't gotten that far. I know little bits about, what's ahead in the future of the manga. But as of recording this video, I am only like more than halfway through season 6. I'm nowhere near the finale of the show yet. I'm not even caught up on the show itself. I do believe it just finished season 7 not too long ago. I don't know when season 8's coming out. But to put things simply, if you're just here for stats, Tomura should at the very least be continental, multi-continental at most, and relativistic at least, and MFTL plus at best. So, now that we got the stats and story of Tomura Shigaraki out of the way, let's finally delve into Mahito. And there's not really a whole lot to talk about with Mahito, because he doesn't have a very complicated origin story like Tomura that I can just go into. What makes Mahito interesting is what he represents, and to get into that, we gotta delve into the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, there exist these things called cursed spirits. These things are born from negative emotions, and it kind of varies how strong they are. Sometimes they can just be a little nuisance, like there was this one spirit that just hung around on this girl's shoulder, and it just caused her a bit of neck pain, and that's really all it was. And cursed spirits are kind of like hollows from Bleach in that they are very much invisible to normal humans, and only those who know how to use cursed energy are able to see them. And that's a whole different story for later. But like I said, these curses vary in power level and what these negative emotions specifically are based on. But Mahito specifically is part of a group of cursed spirits that were born out of humanity's hatred for something else. Like there's Jogo, who's born out of humanity's fear for fire, hatred for fire. There was Dagon, who was born out of humanity's fear and hatred for water. And then I'm gonna guess Hanami or whatever her name was, I don't know. I'm going to guess was born out of humanity's fear / hatred of nature. And then there's Mahito, who was born out of humanity's hatred for other humans. And due to that, he is probably one of the most powerful cursed spirits in existence. And that's a very high praise in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. Whether he is one of the most, the most powerful? I don't know, but he is most certainly one of the most powerful, because there's still Sukuna to consider, but is he even a cursed spirit? Sukuna is a very weird situation, I'm not going to go too much into him, but anyway, Mahito kind of like I said, there's not really much to delve into Mahito background-wise, but the thing he shares with Shigaraki is, like, his rivalry with the main character, albeit Mahito did not last nearly as long as Shigaraki, like I said at the beginning of the video. Much like Shigaraki did kind of start out pretty weak. Kind of. It's more along the lines of he didn't exactly have a grasp on what to do with his powers yet. And so, but then he started walking around the human world and started having more and more fun the more people he mutilated. So, might as well get into his powers now, because that's really all I can say about him through story, and what I can say further about him can just be explained with his powers. So his power is a curse technique called idle transfiguration, where he touches somebody and he can manipulate their soul. What this means in terms of Jujutsu Kaisen is very complicated. I remember getting into a discussion about with another reaction YouTuber about what Mahito's abilities actually do, and here's the best I can describe. Physical bodies and souls are very much connected. To what extent, I am unaware, but you cannot have one without the other. If you have a physical body, even if it's just a small piece, a soul has to be attached to that body, and vice versa, really. So, and this is kind of best exemplified in the Shibuya incident arc, where a sorcerer was able to make himself, like, literally turn himself into a... But this is best specified in the Shibuya incident arc, in my opinion, where a sorcerer was able to turn his body into the body of Toji Fushiguro, who was one of the most physically capable people on the planet. And yeah, dude was known as a sorcerer killer. So, but because, yeah, the sorcerer was able to turn into Toji's physical body, but that little piece of the soul that's connected to Toji's body was able to take over. Like, he was so powerful, his will was so strong that little bit of his soul was able to take over the body and basically... I don't think it killed the host, but he might basically took the host and shoved him into the back of the mind. Yeah, it was that kind of serious. So, yeah. So when I say Mahito can manipulate a person's soul, it's meant quite literally, and touches them, he can manipulate their body any way he wants. And by manipulate their body, I mean turns their body into the shape of a sword, literally, like flesh sword, like kind of things. Or rather, he can just touch them and they just turn into a, Cronenberg monstrosity, and basically they can basically be considered dead. It's called an instant kill for a reason, and if they aren't dead, they very much wish they were. So, yeah, that pretty much put him into main conflict with our main character, Yuji Itadori, who was very much against killing in any kind of prospect, but, looking at these things that Mahito was creating, are they really alive? That kind of thing. And so, yeah. And the war crimes that Mahito goes on to commit are kind of legendary, honestly. You gotta respect the game at some point. Like, dude's born out of a hatred for other humans, so at some point you gotta respect the game.
What the hell are you? Mahito! You don't have to shout! I can hear you fine! Yuji Itadori!
Like, just how far he's willing to take, his rivalry with Yuji, like how many people he mutilated and killed, just to screw with Yuji, mind you. But yes, as Mahito, fought, the more he understood his powers and what he could do with them. And there's a special technique that people who use cursed energy, it's considered the pinnacle of cursed energy, manipulation. And that is called domain expansion, where they basically put up a field of, I don't know, it's very hard to explain without, the literal definition in front of me. But think of it as they create their own confined space where they can do pretty much whatever they want with the abilities they have, and whatever the attack they throw out is guaranteed to hit. And since Mahito very much and since Mahito's, ability is basically a one hit, his domain expansion pretty much guarantees his victory. So yeah, and like I said, he only got more powerful from there. And in his first big fight with Yuji, he unlocked domain expansion, and then in his next big fight with Yuji, he unlocked a technique known as the Black Flash. Now, again, this is a very complicated technique to explain without having the definition in front of me. But if a sorcerer is able to punch, like just as an example, punch someone and then imbue their fist with cursed energy within like 1/1000th of a second, I think it is. It creates a phenomenon known as the Black Flash, and basically it doubles it doubles the strength of that hit. And I think it used to be a squared hit, but until like the author realized, oh, that's that's probably that would make an opponent way too overpowered, so he just reduced it to it just doubles the attack. So Mahito was able to do that, and eventually Mahito was able to just grow powerful enough to basically evolve into another state. I'm not sure what exactly this is. We barely got to see it, and plus it was defeated in the exact same fight it was introduced, so who knows where to go with that. Okay, I nearly forgot to discuss this one other thing. This is the problem with doing things unscripted. Mahito, because of idol transfiguration, is able to manipulate his own soul, and he's able to basically heal from any damage, so long as he has cursed energy. But being a disaster level curse, he has quite a lot of cursed energy, so he could just regenerate as much as he wants, as long as there's assumedly as long as there's a bit of him left. It wouldn't surprise me if he can still regenerate if there's nothing of him left, because soul stuff and all that. But regardless. So you may be wondering, I'm going into a lot of like what techniques Mahito can use and like what abilities he has, and I haven't really gotten into feats, and that's the fun part. He doesn't have any direct feats other than the Black Flash, because like I said, it requires you to hit something within 1/1000th of a second, with cursed energy amplification, but whatever. And I believe that's it's not a relativistic feat, at least I don't think it is, but it is kinda up there. It's very up there in speed, in at least reaction speed. In terms of movement speed, there's not really a whole lot to go into. Like I said, Mahito doesn't exactly have a lot of direct feats to compare to. But he does at least scale to quite a few other characters, like the other disaster curses, such as Jogo, who was able to drop this gigantic meteor on the city, and Death Battle calculated to be this many tons of TNT, which I believe is like a city destroying. But it was stated that Mahito is above the other disaster curses, so Mahito does at least scale above Jogo. And to go back to speed for a bit, again, Jujutsu Kaisen's speed scaling can be very strange, because at one point it capped out at like Mach 2, but that was already an incredibly silly statement to make when Maki, like in the first season, Maki was able to catch a bullet in front of her when, like, literally it was right in front of her face, and then she moved her arm and caught it. And that's like Mach 6, I believe that's what it required to be, or something like that. I don't know, I'll put it up on the screen later. But yeah, so when it comes to, but like I said, Mahito doesn't really have a lot of direct speed feats, but I do believe if you're being incredibly generous, the best speed feat you can reasonably scale Mahito to is this this feat of Hikari dodging Kashimo's lightning. And again, this is being incredibly generous because these two should probably scale above Mahito, if I recall correctly. And we don't even know if the lightning, if Hikari actually dodged the lightning, or if the lightning still hit its target, and we just see it at a very confusing angle. It's one of those things that we're going to have to wait until the anime comes out with that before we can actually, get a good grasp on what exactly happened here. But again, this is a very, but then again, we are being very generous to Mahito here, and this is a lightning feat, and that's very impressive. So to compile everything, Mahito can get just above city level in terms of in terms of attack, and in terms of speed, he gets to lightning timing slash maybe relativistic if you want to be incredibly generous. So, when it comes down to who I think would win, I mean, let's go over the various stuff we have on these two. But when it comes to stats, Shigaraki completely outclasses Mahito on a bad day. Because, like I said, the only reason we have faster than light feats in My Hero Academia to begin with is directly because of Shigaraki. And when it comes to Mahito's speed, like, he can only indirectly scale to a lightning feat that's dubious at best, and even then he probably can't even scale to it anyway. And when it comes to destroying capabilities, yeah, they're like scaling, like, granted, you do have to scale Shigaraki to other people, but at the same time, he's directly compared to those other people, and those other people are like multi-continental, can get up to that at least. And then there's Mahito, who can scale to Jogo, who can destroy a city with that giant meteor, and even then, Mahito's never shown that kind of level of destruction on his own, and I mean, we can assume he has enough cursed energy to perform a feat like that, but we don't exactly know. But like I said, when it comes to stats, Shigaraki's got it down pat. It's not even close. That being said, when it comes down to abilities, that's where it gets really complicated, and it's why I spent so much time talking about Mahito's, one-hit kill technique, apparently. And it's why I spent so much time talking about Mahito's idle transfiguration, because that move is really busted, and all it's going to take is one touch to do it. And considering Mahito's very impressive regeneration, being able to perform idle transfiguration on himself and regenerate, using his soul, it would stand to reason that eventually Mahito would be able to touch Shigaraki at some point and perform idle transfiguration on him. Here's where it gets rather complicated. See, this is where we have to apply verse equalization, because, verse equalization by itself is already a very complicated topic, because you just arbitrarily make these two things the same thing, and that can cause quite a bit of controversy, and it's something that, but in terms of, like, this kind of battle, we kind of do need to apply it, because on the one hand, it probably shouldn't work on any, like, idle transfiguration shouldn't work on anything without cursed energy, right? So why would it work on Shigaraki, who has none? And if we take, Mahito's, very existence as a cursed spirit into account, those without cursed energy can't see cursed spirits. So should Shigaraki be able to see him? That it's a very, like I said, a very complicated situation. But if we use verse equalization and say, okay, yes, Mahito can just touch Shigaraki and perform idle transfiguration, as if Shigaraki did have cursed energy. And that's when things start falling apart for Mahito, because if you don't use verse equalization, neither of them can harm the other. And if you do use verse equalization, that's when things get really complicated. because within the users of All for One and One for All, there exists a vestige realm, kind of. In terms of Jujutsu Kaisen, this is almost exactly like an innate domain, the realm within a person's body that they, expand outward to create a domain expansion. Now, this, like I said, and this is where things get complicated for Mahito, because normally all he has to do is touch someone and they immediately, just start to transfigure into whatever abomination Mahito wants. There is one exception in Jujutsu Kaisen, and that was Yuji Itadori, hence their rivalry. Mahito could not perform Idol Transfiguration because Yuji's soul was directly tied to Sukuna, the king of curses, and the most powerful character in the entire series. And so, touching Yuji's soul was tantamount to touching Sukuna's, and Mahito was pretty much immediately transported into Sukuna's innate domain, and Sukuna's like, look, we had fun making fun of the kid. You're not getting a second chance. And literally cuts Mahito once, deals him a serious amount of damage, and Mahito's just kind of blasted out, going, what the fuck just happened? And that's pretty much what happened there. So, if we use verse equalization and Mahito touches Shigaraki, Mahito gets transported into the vestige realm, where he would meet with All for One. Would Idol Transfiguration work on Shigaraki because of this? It's unclear, because ain't no way. Because, like I said, those multi-continental feats from earlier, All for One can scale to them too, so he already scales above Mahito, so he could probably knock Mahito out just as easily as Sukuna did. And because, Idol Transfiguration would prove to be useless, Mahito would have to rely on physical attacks, and that's just not going to work on Shigaraki. Now, on the other end of the equation, there's Shigaraki. Would Shigaraki be able to see Mahito? Because regardless of verse equalization, he probably shouldn't be able to see Mahito, simply because... In regards to verse equalization, Shigaraki still probably wouldn't be able to see Mahito, because even, humans with, who don't know how to use cursed energy, they still have it, but they still can't see other cursed spirits. So, if we apply cursed energy to Shigaraki, it's not like Shigaraki is going to magically be able to see Mahito. Shigaraki does, on the other hand, have multiple quirks that are good for seeing, invisible opponents, or they should be good for seeing invisible opponents. Because after All Might caved All for One's face in, All for One had to be able to see somehow, and I do believe, he has, an infrared quirk, he has all these quirks that help him see without eyes, so he should be able to see, so, theoretically, Shigaraki should be able to see Mahito, regardless of, cursed energy or not. Now, it's also established in Jujutsu Kaisen that only cursed techniques can kill cursed spirits, but, again, it's very much a no-limits fallacy. I've seen this argument floated around quite a bit. Would Shigaraki be even able to kill Mahito because no cursed energy, that kind of thing. But like I said, no limits fallacy. It's the same. I do believe it's the same. That's the same kind of argument as, Ganondorf can only be killed by holy weapons, so only holy weapons are able to kill Ganondorf, and that's just not how that should just not be how that works. But even if you want to go down that rabbit hole of an argument of Shigaraki doesn't have cursed energy, he can't use cursed techniques, so of course he can't kill Mahito. Well, in his own vestige realm, Shigaraki was able to decay the other vestiges, or rather, I'm not sure how literal you want to take it, But if you're going to be that generous to Mahito, you gotta be pretty generous to Shigaraki as well. And he's been shown decaying other vestiges before, meaning he can touch souls. So, there you go. And even then, and so if you want to say, okay, well, what's stopping Mahito from just stalling out Shigaraki? Well, he can't, because Shigaraki's just going to keep decaying Mahito's body over and over and over again until Mahito just dies because due to lack of cursed energy. And that was pretty much his downfall in the series too, because while he didn't necessarily die, he was about to. He was beaten down by Yuji so often that he just didn't have any more cursed energy left to regenerate. So Yuji was pretty much stalking him, and it's like one of the coolest scenes in the entire show, with Yuji being just a whole metaphorical representation of an injured rabbit and a wolf. Just, oh man, it was great. And seeing this utterly reprehensible character on the ground, like not even able to beg for mercy, because Yuji was just like, yeah, you're right, I am you, and if you ever come back to life, I'll just kill you again and again, and if this is my lot in life to continue this never-ending cycle, I'll gladly accept it. And just, that kind of thing. But yeah, enough of describing Mahito's death. Let's keep getting into why Shigaraki kills Mahito. Again, the versatility advantage is just off the charts. Mahito may have probably the most useful ability in this fight, being able to use souls to his own advantage. But I've already gone into that's probably not going to work on Shigaraki, even if we discount the stat advantage, where it's going to be very unlikely that Mahito's going to be able to, get that hit in. Like, he probably could, but it's going to be very difficult for him to do so, and way too difficult for, I think, Death Battle to actually consider that a valuable win condition. And meanwhile, Shigaraki doesn't even have to touch Mahito in order to kill him. All he has to do is, I don't know, blast him with air cannons, or through various means of his quirk, or even just touching the ground and allowing the ground to decay until it reaches Mahito. But Mahito can fly, and like I said, when it comes to just versatility and powers, while Mahito is very skilled in what he can do with idle transfiguration, it's just nothing compared to the amount of quirks stored within All for One. And when his main method of killing people is completely useless, he has to come down to his physical abilities, and those just don't stack up to what Shigaraki can do. Because if you can take away idle transfiguration, and if you take away all of Shigaraki's quirks, he's still on par with a Prime All Might, and then who gets the Multi-Continental, and then you have Mahito, who's kind of, he doesn't scale nearly as high. Without cursed energy, he's not going to be able to scale to Jogo, so even if he did, yeah, I don't really know what else to say here. This is people throw around the word stomp, way too easily, simply because, yeah, it's very easy to call a match where one person is clearly the winner, a stomp. Just because there's a clear winner doesn't mean it's a stomp. That's what's called a straightforward victory. It's kind of like what they did with Solid Snake versus Sam Fisher, because those two were very evenly matched, but when it came right down to it, Snake just had more advantages. So they called the battle straightforward. It's not going to be an easy fight for Snake, but it was still very much a solid win for him. It was straightforward for him. When it comes to Shigaraki versus Mahito, I kind of see the stomp comparison. People have been giving Mahito some pity votes, but I just don't see how Mahito would be able to take down Shigaraki without being incredibly generous to him. And even then, if Mahito manages to win, like, I might actually call bullshit on it. Like, there have been a few battles that I disagree with. There are a few battles that I still disagree with to this day, but I can at least look at their reasoning and say, okay, yeah, pretty solid reasoning. I get it. Like Vader versus Obito. Yeah, okay, I see the reasoning behind there. But those are mostly like when the opponents are very evenly matched, and it could really go either way. Shigaraki versus Mahito is not that. This is an all-out stomp in Shigaraki's favor. But honestly, I kind of like that. It's kind of like Omni-Man versus Homelander. You don't really need the fight to be evenly matched for it to be entertaining. Plus plus we have a good blueprint for Mahito's defeat, considering, like I said, I went into that last scene between him and Yuji, in probably more detail than I needed to, but that's because, yeah, it was a great death scene. Like I said, Mahito didn't necessarily die, but he might as well have. He stopped being relevant after that point in the story. When you get right down to it, Shigaraki has the stats edge very easily. He has the versatility advantage, not as much as you might think, but it's still a very big advantage. And if you're at least a tiny bit generous, he can easily resist Mahito's main form only method of being able to kill him. And when it comes to Mahito's advantages, like I said, he has a very good ability that would easily be a win condition in most other fights, but it's not going to be here. In short, Shigaraki plays League of Legends.
Death!
Mahito wins. There we go. Anyway, till next time, guys. See ya.